Doctors of Reddit, what is the weirdest cure your patients have tried to use for their illnesses? One of my patients, grown adult, swallowed a thumbtack as a dare but immediately afterwards started having chest pain. Probably from mucosal damage in his esophagus. So his idea was to try to take a self-made stack of maybe 7 or 8 penny-size magnets which he stuck down his throat to try to pull the thumbtack back out and ended up accidentally swallowing that too. I consulted a gastroenterologist and I could hear his facepalm on the other end of the phone. Not a doctor obviously, but a two-time cancer patient. The amount of people who tried to convince me that changing my body's pH by either ingesting large amounts of baking soda, base, or lemon juice cider vinegar, acid, was abnormally high. Everyone had a blog to share claiming this huge secret my doctor wouldn't want me to know allegedly. Interestingly, they couldn't even get it straight which way the pH needed to go. My co-worker's patient with breast cancer made a 3-inch gash in her thigh and stuffed it with garbanzo beans because she read that it triggers the body to fight the cancer. She was actively receiving chemotherapy at the time. She didn't even disclose this to him. He just noticed as he was doing the exam. I'm not a doctor, but I know someone who got really into urine therapy. Meaning she would drink her own urine every day. She claimed it made her more alert and cured her migraines. Old guy lived by himself out in the bush. Developed a large chronic ulcer on his shin, so wrapped chicken wire around it to protect it from trauma and keep his clothes clean. Unfortunately, the granulation tissue from the ulcer base grew over the chicken wire. He just cut around it and added another layer of wire. He came to hospital when it became infected. Needed surgery to debride the ulcer and remove the mesh wire which was completely covered by tissue. We affectionately called him Chicken Wire Bob. Not a doctor, but had a friend tried to heal a cut on his foot by keeping it moist and saline. Wrapping it in bandages. With a sock and shoe squeezed on. Under the heater. For days. He ended up getting so sick he had to be rushed to hospital. But literally could have died. I'm not a doctor. And I shouldn't even have been told about this. But my friend's dad is a GP. He once had a family come in complaining that they all shared the same symptoms. Even their newborn child. It turned out that the mother had chlamydia, which she passed to her child during birth. And the rest of the family ate her placenta and everyone contracted it. He told them this and recommended a treatment. To which they responded, "No. Thank you. We wanted to know what was wrong. But we've got herbal remedies for this." Not a doctor. But back in college I was in a medical class. The teacher explained that she was a nurse for 20 something years and told us a few funny stories about people who had these weird cures. She then asked us if we ever heard of these cures. One of the students claimed that a friend of hers had gotten an STD, herpes or something IDK. And he tried to cure it by spraying red bug spray on his crotch. The teacher burst out laughing while everyone else was disgusted and shocked. Not to me, but in the waiting room of the clinic. This guy walks out into the waiting room and recognizes my dad. They are distant cousins but I didn't know him. And he tells my dad that while jumping off rocks into the local river, he busted his shin open on another rock underwater. So his remedy? Pour alcohol on it and throw a match on the gash to cauterize it. I'm not a doctor and nor will I ever be one. But a friend of mine apparently had some weird thing where blood doesn't flow to your toes anymore. He read online that drinking blood can help reduce or possibly eliminate the problem. So he bought 2 liters of cow blood and drank that. Strange enough, he healed completely. Me and his doctor were both really surprised and relieved. Not a doctor. But 19-year-old me decided to try and combat a cold by drinking a bunch of vodka to heal the virus. My plan was pretty foolproof. I saw someone in the emergency department about a month ago who had pain in both eyes after welding without eye protection. This is known as photokeratitis. It doesn't usually last very long and the treatment is predominantly symptom-based, artificial tears, anti-inflammatory eye drops, cold compresses, darkroom etc. The man had googled home treatments and found that layering smashed bananas over his eyelids helped. I guess it's not too dissimilar to a cold compress. I told him I'd add it to my repertoire. Oh. I'm not a doctor. But I have an ex who claimed to have health problems. She made me watch this documentary about some guy who would acquire meat and then let it rot for weeks or months. And then eat it raw. Supposedly it cured his health problems. My ex wanted to do the same thing as a treatment for her health problems, which were actually caused by the abuse of narcotics, alcohol, and OTC drugs. Edit. Not a doctor but M's. For a while heroin got really big in my city and people were dropping like flies. Somehow, some way, a rumor got passed around that inserting popsicles in people's rectums would bring them out of an overdose. They had gotten this down to a science as they'd use red, white and boom pops to match the skin color with the depth. That is, if the person was blue, they'd insert it up to the blue part of the popsicle. For a solid 2-3 months we'd find people out cold, pants around their ankles and popsicle sticks sticking out of their bumps. My mother-in-law is a huge essential oil fan. I was having an asthma flare-up. Couldn't find my inhaler. She insisted that if she rubbed this oil on my chest it would go away. I wasn't having it. I had my inhaler somewhere there. She finally yelled at me to stop and try it. I did. I sat there for 10 minutes, wheezing, while she applied it and told me to relax. My wife then found my inhaler and brought it to me. I used it. Instantly felt better. And her mom was like, "See?" I worked with a guy who got his hand cut in a knife fight. He wrapped it in masking tape. When it started getting infected, he'd put gasoline on it and rewrap it. He stopped coming into work not long after that. Not a doctor but I love to tell my dermatologists I go to a clinic so there's always lots of students about how I had a bad case of viral warts on my inner thigh and how quickly it was spreading due to my shaving. Since I couldn't shave, I started naring and one day while at my mom's pool and I ran out of Nair so I turned her bathroom closet upside down in a panic searching for Nair so I could finish my legs off before the picnic. To my delight there was a very old bottle of Nair way in the bag. It was left behind by my brother's wife from when they were first married and living with our parents. My mom saves everything L. Anyway, I put it on and an agonizing 10 minutes later I rinsed it off and to my utter amazement, every single wart on my legs were gone. In their place was a little bit of blood and tan lines from where the warts once were. I checked the Nair bottle and it had expired 20 years prior. I called Nair and told them about it but they just sent me coupons. Doctor of pharmacy, but my fiance's cousin told me that smoking cured her asthma. You can't argue with stupid so I just let it go. Worked as a medical scribe in the ER. Patient comes in complaining of a skin abscess. Lifts her shirt and taped to her stomach is a piece of white bread. As the nurse pulls it off, out slips what's left of a raw egg. The doctor was speechless and after what felt like an eternity, the patient explains that she read on the internet that eggs have antibacterial properties and that they can cure skin infections. Never really got to how the bread got involved. Doc was nice enough to sympathize and move on quickly yet I damn near dropped my laptop. I had a patient who was hit in the face with a softball during practice. It was pretty severe. I had diagnosed it as a traumatic orbital zygomatic ridge fracture. Her remedy was to use clear packing tape over her cheek in the hopes that the bones would just reset themselves. Obviously, that's not how it works. I RX'd her some pain medication. Took a CBCT image prior to surgery. Not a doctor but had a patient who was waiting for God to heal her melanoma on her face. I worked for an optometrist and she came in with a giant band-aid over one side of her face but I could see under it. Cancer had literally eaten all the flesh around her cheek and eye. It was horror movie status disgusting. All over her chart were the doc's notes. Still waiting for God to heal going back at least 3 years. She also picked out our most expensive designer frames and all I could think was no one is going to even notice those on your face. Lady was asked to see a patient that had obvious advanced breast cancer. Instead of seeing regular doctors, They saw a naturopathic doctor. They convinced the patient to have garlic wrapped in a banana leaf placed into their leg to see if that would help. Narrator, it didn't. Eye doctor here. Apparently breast milk is effective against bacterial conjunctivitis. Multiple nursing moms have used it in their kids' eyes with good success. I'm a type 1 diabetic and people would say to take cinnamon. No need for insulin when I could have cinnamon to make a pancreas functional. Who knew Fireball could save lives? I'm a kidney doc. Had a guy with advanced chronic kidney disease from his other health conditions. Kidneys were scarred and filtering units don't regenerate. He heard that Tom Brady uses an electromagnetic field generator and asked me if it would help. I said absolutely not. Then he brought me this book filled with pseudoscience and how NASA research shows it's a cure-all. He financed one for $7,000. Needless to say, his kidney numbers are no better. And the best part was he couldn't afford his copay and asked for some help. I sympathize that there's no good way to reverse his condition. But it's sad that a company would on someone's desperation to make a quick buck. Urine therapy. By far the weirdest thing I came across in my short-lived nursing career. I'll never forget the woman who kept drinking from her catheter night bag like a baby suckling a breast. Called by Schleierson, but my god. Pediatric dentist here. Had a mom forego small simple fillings for her son and hoped to remineralize the teeth with essential oils and mashed up eggshells. When I explained why we were way past the point of demineralization and that the process she suggested was implausible, she screamed at me that I only cared about money and stormed out. A year later dad brought the little guy back for multiple extractions and stainless steel crowns. I'm a doctor now, but this was before. When I was in med school, a woman tried to cure her cancer by starving it. By starving herself. This does not work. Cancer just steals all your energy and nutrients. By the time she accepted medical help, she was skin and bones and her tumor just grew right out through her skin. It was awful. Edit. To anyone saying my oncologist said X, I'm a family doctor. Not an oncologist. And I don't know you or your body. Please listen to your oncologist over me. To anyone saying, that snake guy said why, that doesn't sound like a very trustworthy source. One of my patients had been wearing a bandana over the left side of his face for over a year. His wife and daughter never questioned it. He passed out in his kitchen one day. And when EMS arrived they removed it. He had a tumor that had eroded the entire side of his face. Eye socket. And eyeball. He looked like Two-Face. He came to the hospital and refused all treatment because his diet of only eating blueberries had gotten him this far. And he was going to go back to it. Never found out how long he lasted. I'm not a doctor, but honey. Honey heals wounds. And it heals wounds better than anything else. In many cases. A particular honey. Manuka honey, made by bees who take nectar from the tree that tea tree oil comes from, has been tested clinically and it is being used by Western medicine and hospitals to help heal MRSA and other antibiotic-resistant infections. But I have used regular old honey to heal things that weren't quite that bad. For instance, my partner had a cyst erupt on his shoulder that would not heal until we tried honey. This is more sad than weird. A woman came in with an early stage treatable breast cancer. After talking to random women in the hospital's waiting room, she decided to refuse medical treatment and instead use essential oils. The women convinced her that by rubbing her breast with essential oils the tumor will disappear and that any form of chemo or surgery will disfigure her while essential oils won't. Fast forward a couple of years. She came in with a stage 4 cancer. It got everywhere it could possibly get without killing her. She got a couple of weeks of palliative care before leaving her teenage children orphans. Another one is this bee guy. He was basically an alternative medicine healer. He called himself a doctor while not having any MD or PhD. This guy uses bee stings as a cure for cancer, all and every kind of cancer. He had different protocols for every type of cancer, number of sessions, number of stings per session, the areas of the stings, etc. While at least he didn't encourage his patients to quit treatment. He did expose them to harm. During chemotherapy the immune system will go down. The bee stings would get infected most of the time and we had a couple of close calls. This dude had convinced all his patients that the brush with death that they had was because of the cancer toxins leaving their bodies. The cherry on top is that his treatment was not anywhere close to cheap. He was making in a day more than any doctor I know would make in a month. Edit, added the big guy's story. Well, this was given to me by the doctor. My parents was really protective with candy and shit like that, especially when I was younger, so we found out I wasn't getting no salt and fat, so the doctor told me to eat at least 2 bags of chips and a Coke every day for the next 1.5-2 weeks. Well, I was a 6-year-old boy and this was pretty much heaven. I still to this day find it really weird. Doctor here and I had a patient trying to cure a bad case of hemorrhoids. She was coating cloves of garlic in honey and shoving them into her rectum. That was a new one for me. Guy though, that drinking vodka would stop any drug high including crack, weed up, and heroin. Still don't know where he got it from.